The man's world is turned upside down when he discovers his pregnant wife has been living a double life. The shocking secret she's been hiding changes everything he thought he knew about their relationship. This gripping tale of betrayal, love, and unexpected twists will leave you speechless. David sat at the kitchen table, his hands wrapped around a steaming cup of coffee. The early morning sunlight streamed through the windows, casting a warm glow on the walls of their modest home. Emma moved about the kitchen, her every movement fluid and calm. She was humming softly, a tune he didn't recognize, as she prepared breakfast. She wore an old t-shirt and a pair of yoga pants, her hair tied back in a messy bun. To David, she had never looked more beautiful. Emma's baby bump was prominent now, a constant reminder of the life they had created together. David felt a surge of pride every time he looked at her, knowing that in a few short months, they would welcome their child into the world. His life, for the most part, felt perfect. But as he sat there, sipping his coffee, something tugged at the edges of his mind, a feeling he couldn't quite shake. It wasn't the first time he had felt it. A sense of unease, fleeting but persistent, lingered in the background of their otherwise idyllic life. It wasn't anything specific Emma had said or done. It was more about what she didn't say, what she refused to talk about. David had met Emma 3 years earlier at a small cafe downtown. She had been sitting by herself, her nose buried in a book, her dark curls falling over her face. He had been drawn to her immediately, her quiet confidence in the way she seemed entirely lost in her own world. Their conversation that day had been effortless, and by the end of it, he knew he wanted to see her again. Their relationship had progressed quickly. Within a year, they were married. David couldn't believe his luck. Emma was kind, intelligent, and fiercely independent. She had a way of making everyone around her feel at ease, and he was no exception. But as much as David loved her, there were parts of Emma that remained a mystery to him. She rarely talked about her past, brushing off questions about her childhood or family. "There's not much to tell," she would say, changing the subject with a smile. David didn't press her. He respected her boundaries, trusting that she would share more when she was ready. Now, with a baby on the way, those unanswered questions began to weigh on him. He wanted to know more about the woman he had married, about the life she had lived before they met. But every time he tried to bring it up, Emma would shut down. "Why does it matter?" she had asked him once, her voice tinged with irritation. "The past is the past. What's important is what we're building together." David had let it go, not wanting to upset her. But that nagging feeling of unease remained. He told himself it was nothing, that he was overthinking things. Emma loved him, and he loved her. That was all that mattered, or so he thought. It started with a phone call. David was in his office going over some paperwork when his phone buzzed on the desk. He glanced at the screen. Unknown number. Normally he would have ignored it, but something compelled him to answer. "Hello?" There was a pause on the other end before a man's voice spoke. "Is this David?" "Yes, who's this?" The man hesitated. "You don't know me, but I think we need to talk. It's about your wife." David's heart skipped a beat. "Who are you? What are you talking about?" "Meet me at the cafe on 5th and Main in an hour. I'll explain everything." The call disconnected before David could respond. He stared at the phone in his hand, his mind racing. Who was this man? And what could he possibly have to say about Emma? David debated whether or not to go. A part of him wanted to dismiss the call as some kind of prank, but that nagging feeling was back, stronger than ever. He couldn't ignore it. An hour later, David was sitting in a corner booth at the cafe where he had first met Emma. His eyes scanned the room, looking for the man who had called him. "David." He turned to see a man in his late 30s standing by the table. He was tall, with sharp features and a serious expression. "I'm Jacob," the man said, extending a hand. "Thanks for meeting me." David shook his hand, his stomach churning with unease. "What is this about? What do you know about my wife?" Jacob sat down across from him, his expression grave. "This isn't easy for me to say, but I think you deserve to know the truth. Your wife, Emma, she's not who you think she is." David's blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" Jacob reached into his pocket and pulled out a photograph, sliding it across the table. David picked it up and stared at the image. It was a younger Emma, standing next to Jacob. She was smiling, her arm wrapped around his waist. "That was taken 5 years ago," Jacob said. "Emma and I were engaged." David's head snapped up, his heart pounding in his chest. "What? That's not possible." Jacob nodded, his expression somber. I thought so too until she disappeared. No explanation, no goodbye. She just vanished. David felt like the ground had been pulled out from under him. Why are you telling me this now? Because I found out she's with you, Jacob said. I don't know why she left me or why she kept her past a secret, but I thought you deserved to know. David's mind raced as he tried to make sense of what he was hearing. He didn't want to believe Jacob, but the photograph in his hand was undeniable. When he returned home that evening, David couldn't look at Emma the same way. She greeted him with her usual warmth, but all he could see was the photograph and Jacob's words echoing in his mind. As Emma chatted about her day, David nodded along, barely listening. He needed to confront her, but he didn't know how. He needed answers, but he was afraid of what he might find. Little did he know the truth was more complicated and more devastating than he could have ever imagined. David sat on the edge of the bed that night, watching Emma as she brushed her hair in front of the mirror. She seemed so peaceful, so content, but David's mind was anything but. The photograph Jacob had shown him was tucked away in his jacket pocket, burning like a secret he wasn't ready to confront. He replayed the conversation at the cafe over and over in his head. The details Jacob had shared, the look in his eyes, it all seemed too real to ignore. But how could it be? Emma, the woman he loved, the mother of his unborn child, had been engaged to another man and had never mentioned it. Everything okay? Emma asked, turning to face him. David forced a smile. Yeah, just tired. Emma walked over and sat beside him, resting her hand on his knee. You've been working so hard lately. Maybe we should plan a little getaway before the baby comes. Just the two of us. David nodded, his throat tightening. Her touch, her voice, they were so familiar, yet suddenly felt like a facade. He wanted to ask her about Jacob, about the photograph, but he couldn't bring himself to do it. Not yet. Over the next few days, David found himself scrutinizing everything Emma did. Every word she said, every expression that crossed her face, he analyzed for signs of deception. He hated himself for it, but he couldn't stop. One evening, Emma's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter while she was in the shower. David glanced at the screen. It was a text message from an unknown number. Have you told him yet? His heart pounded as he stared at the message. Told him what? He hesitated for a moment, then picked up the phone and unlocked it. The conversation thread was short. The most recent messages read, Unknown. I can't believe you're keeping this from him. It's not fair. Emma. It's not the right time. I'll tell him when I'm ready. David's hands trembled as he put the phone back on the counter. Who was this person? And what was Emma hiding from him? When Emma came downstairs a few minutes later, David tried to act normal, but his mind was racing. Should he confront her about the message? Should he demand answers? Something smells good, Emma said, smiling as she walked into the kitchen. David forced a smile. Just reheating leftovers. They ate dinner in near silence, the tension thick in the air. David could barely look at her, afraid that if he did, he might blurt out everything he was feeling. That night, as Emma slept beside him, David lay awake, staring at the ceiling. He felt like he was drowning in a sea of unanswered questions. The next morning, David decided he couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. He needed to know the truth. Emma, he said as they sat together over breakfast, can I ask you something? She looked up from her plate, her expression curious. Of course. Why don't you ever talk about your past? Emma froze, her fork hovering in midair. What do you mean? I mean your life before we met, David said, trying to keep his tone casual. Your family, your childhood, even your exes. You never talk about any of it. Emma set her fork down and leaned back in her chair. Why are you bringing this up now? I don't know, David said, shrugging. I guess I just realized how little I know about that part of your life. Don't you think it's important? Emma's eyes flickered with something David couldn't quite place. Fear? Anger? My past doesn't matter, David. What matters is the life we're building together. But it does matter, David pressed. It's part of who you are, and I want to understand that part of you. Emma sighed, pushing her chair back from the table. Why are you suddenly so interested in this? Did someone say something to you? David's heart raced. No, of course not. I'm just curious. Emma crossed her arms, her expression guarded. I don't want to talk about it, David. Can't you just let it go? David nodded, though his frustration was boiling beneath the surface. Fine. I just thought, never mind. Emma walked out of the room, leaving David alone with his thoughts. He knew she was hiding something. The question was, what? Over the next week, the tension between them grew. Emma seemed more distant, more irritable. David couldn't tell if it was because of his questions or something else entirely. One evening, while Emma was out running errands, David decided to search for answers himself. He went to their bedroom and opened her nightstand drawer. Inside, he found the usual things: books, a journal, some loose change. But tucked beneath a stack of papers was an envelope. David hesitated, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew he shouldn't invade her privacy, but he couldn't stop himself. He opened the envelope and pulled out its contents: a stack of photographs and a folded piece of paper. The photographs were of Emma, but not the Emma he knew. In these pictures, she looked younger, her hair a different color. She was standing with people David didn't recognize, in places he had never heard her mention. But it was the folded piece of paper that made his blood run cold. It was a marriage certificate. Emma's name was listed, along with another man's, Jacob. David felt like the air had been knocked out of him. She had been married before, and she hadn't told him. When Emma came home that night, David was waiting for her in the living room, the photographs and marriage certificate laid out on the coffee table. "Care to explain this?" he asked, his voice cold. Emma froze in the doorway, her face pale. "Where did you get that?" "Does it matter?" David snapped. "What matters is that you lied to me. You told me you'd never been married." Emma closed the door behind her and walked slowly into the room. "I didn't lie, David. I just didn't tell you." "That's the same thing," David shouted, standing up. "Why didn't you tell me? What else have you been hiding?" Emma sank into a chair, her hands trembling. "It's complicated." "Then uncomplicate it," David demanded. "I want the truth, Emma, all of it." Emma looked up at him, her eyes filled with tears. "If I tell you, you'll hate me." David stared at her, his heart breaking. "Emma, I'm your husband. Whatever it is, we can get through it, but I need to know." Emma took a deep breath, wiping her eyes. "Okay, I'll tell you, but you have to promise to hear me out." David nodded, though he wasn't sure he was ready for what she was about to say. And as Emma began to speak, David realized that the truth was far more devastating than he could have ever imagined. David held Emma close, her trembling form tucked against his chest. The weight of her revelation sat heavily between them, shifting the ground beneath their relationship. Yet as he ran his fingers gently through her hair, he realized there was no turning back now. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. The room was thick with silence, but David's mind was racing. Questions bubbled to the surface, demanding answers. "Emma," he said softly, his voice steady but firm, "I need to know everything. Not just about Jacob, but about these threats. If we're going to protect ourselves, I can't be in the dark." Emma hesitated, pulling away just enough to look up at him. Her eyes were red, her expression weary but resolute. "Okay," she whispered, "but you might regret hearing it all." "I'll take that risk," David replied. "Start from the beginning." Emma exhaled slowly, as if bracing herself. "Jacob wasn't just controlling," she began, her voice laced with both fear and anger. "He was dangerous. He was involved in shady business deals, things I didn't fully understand at first. He had money, but no one really knew where it came from. And if anyone crossed him, he didn't just get angry, he got even." David frowned. "What do you mean by got even?" Emma looked away, her hands twisting together. "I heard stories. People who owed him money or backed out of deals. Things happened to them. Cars vandalized, businesses ruined. There were even whispers of people disappearing. At the time, I thought they were just rumors, exaggerated to keep people in line. But now," her voice trailed off. David's jaw tightened. "And you stayed with him through all that?" "I didn't know what he was at first," Emma said defensively. "By the time I realized I was trapped, he controlled everything. My money, my movements, even who I talked to. Leaving wasn't just difficult, it felt impossible." "But you did leave," David said, his tone softening. "Yes," Emma said, her eyes meeting his. "And it was the hardest thing I've ever done. I knew if I stayed, I'd lose myself completely. So I waited for my chance, and when it came, I took it. I changed my name, cut ties with everyone I knew, and started over." David nodded, trying to process it all. "And you've been running ever since?" Emma nodded, tears welling in her eyes again. "I thought I was safe. I thought I could finally be free of him. And then I met you, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could have a normal life. But now I'm not so sure." David reached for her hand, stilling their nervous movements. We're not running anymore, Emma. This is our home, our family. If Jacob thinks he can scare us, he's in for a fight. Emma's lips trembled as she tried to smile, but the fear in her eyes was undeniable. I don't want you to get hurt because of me. I'm not going to let anyone hurt us, David said firmly. But we need to be smart about this. We'll involve the police, like I said, but we'll also take precautions. Lock the doors, install cameras, whatever it takes to feel safe. Emma nodded slowly. Okay, but David… What? Her voice dropped to a whisper. What if it's not enough? David didn't answer right away. He didn't want to make promises he couldn't keep, but he also refused to let Emma live in fear. It will be, he said finally, his voice filled with quiet determination, because I won't stop fighting until it is. The next day, David took the first steps to secure their home. He called a local security company and arranged for cameras to be installed around the property. He changed the locks on the doors and even added a deadbolt to their bedroom. Every step he took was a reminder of how much their lives had changed in the span of just a few days. Emma watched him work, a mixture of gratitude and guilt swirling within her. She hated that her past had invaded their present, that her choices were now putting David and their unborn child at risk. But as she saw the determination in his eyes, she also felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could get through this. That evening, as they sat together in the living room, Emma reached for David's hand. Thank you, she said softly. David looked at her, his expression gentle but serious. For what? For not giving up on me. On us. David squeezed her hand. I love you, Emma, that hasn't changed. But we have to be honest with each other from now on. No more secrets. Emma nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. No more secrets. As they held each other that night, the weight of their shared burden seemed a little lighter. But deep down, they both knew that the fight was just beginning. As days turned into weeks, Alex's unease grew. He noticed subtle changes in Rebecca's demeanor, moments of distraction, phone calls she took in whispered tones, and a tension in her that seemed out of place for a soon-to-be mother. While Alex tried to dismiss these observations, telling himself it was just stress from her pregnancy, the doubts began to weigh heavier with every passing day. One evening, Alex returned home from work earlier than usual, his heart heavy with the growing distance he felt between them. Rebecca was in the nursery, carefully folding baby clothes. She looked up when he entered, her expression betraying surprise and something else, a fleeting moment of apprehension. Alex brushed it off and approached her with a gentle smile. You've been quiet lately, he said, attempting to sound casual. Is everything okay? You know you can talk to me about anything, right? Rebecca nodded but avoided his gaze. Of course, everything's fine. Just pregnancy hormones. You know how it is. Her words sounded rehearsed, and Alex couldn't shake the feeling that there was more beneath the surface, but he decided not to push her, at least not yet. The breaking point came a few days later. Alex had been working late, poring over company finances at the office. When he returned home, the house was dark and eerily quiet. He called out for Rebecca, but there was no response. Concerned, he climbed the stairs to their bedroom only to find it empty. His heart sank. He was about to call her when he noticed her phone on the bedside table. Its screen lit up with a notification. Against his better judgment, Alex picked it up, intending to check if she'd left him a message or a clue about her whereabouts. What he saw instead made his stomach drop. A series of texts from an unknown number. The messages were cryptic, but undeniably intimate. Have you told him yet? He deserves to know the truth, Rebecca. You can't hide it forever. His hands trembled as he scrolled further, finding more messages that only deepened the pit in his stomach. They referred to starting over and coming clean, but what struck him most was the name of the sender saved as E. Who was E? And what truth was Rebecca hiding? Hours passed and Rebecca still hadn't returned. Alex's mind raced with possibilities, each more horrifying than the last. When the front door finally creaked open just past midnight, he was waiting for her in the living room, the messages still fresh in his mind. Rebecca froze when she saw him, her face pale. Where have you been? Alex's voice was calm, but there was an edge to it, a barely contained storm. I went for a walk, she stammered, avoiding his gaze. I couldn't sleep. Without your phone? Without telling me? He held up her phone, the screen glowing with the incriminating messages. Who's E, Rebecca? And what is it you can't hide forever? Her face turned ashen, and for a moment Alex thought she might faint. She sank into the nearest chair, her hands trembling as she covered her face. "Alex, I can explain," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Then explain." His tone was sharp, but beneath the anger was a desperation to understand. Rebecca looked up at him, her eyes brimming with tears. "I was going to tell you," she said, her voice cracking. I just didn't know how." "Tell me what?" Alex pressed, his patience wearing thin. She took a deep breath as though summoning every ounce of courage she had. "Ethan. The messages are from Ethan. He's someone I used to know, from before I met you." Alex's brow furrowed, his anger momentarily eclipsed by confusion. "Ethan? Who is he to you?" Rebecca hesitated, her hands clutching her knees as though trying to anchor herself. "He's my ex-husband." The words hit Alex like a physical blow. He stared at her, his mind struggling to process what he'd just heard. "Ex-husband? You've been married before?" Rebecca nodded, her tears now flowing freely. "I didn't know how to tell you, Alex. It was a part of my life I wanted to leave behind. Ethan and we ended things years ago. It was a toxic relationship. He was controlling, manipulative. I thought I'd moved on, but now he's back and he's—" Her voice trailed off, her hands trembling. "And he's what, Rebecca?" Alex's voice was quieter now, but no less intense. "Why is he texting you? Why is he saying you can't hide the truth?" Rebecca looked at him, her eyes filled with a mix of guilt and fear. "He found out I'm pregnant. He's threatening to tell you everything if I don't meet his demands." Alex's stomach churned. "Demands? What does he want?" "Money," Rebecca admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "He wants me to pay him to stay away, to keep quiet. He says if I don't, he'll ruin everything. He'll tell you lies about me, about our past. And Alex, I was so scared I didn't want to lose you." For a moment, Alex couldn't speak. His mind reeled with a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, betrayal, and a deep sadness he couldn't articulate. "Rebecca," he said finally, his voice trembling, "why didn't you trust me enough to tell me the truth from the beginning?" "I was afraid," she admitted, her tears flowing freely now. "Afraid you'd think less of me. Afraid you wouldn't want me anymore. I've made mistakes, Alex, but you're the best thing that's ever happened to me. I didn't want my past to ruin our future." Alex turned away, running his hands through his hair as he tried to process everything. The woman he loved, the mother of his unborn child, had been living with a secret so monumental it threatened to destroy everything they'd built together. "Do you love me?" he asked finally, his voice quiet. "With all my heart," Rebecca replied, her voice steady despite her tears. "And I'll spend the rest of my life proving it to you if you'll let me." Alex's heart ached at the sincerity in her voice, but the weight of her betrayal was too much to bear in that moment. "I need time," he said finally, his voice hollow. "I need time to figure out what all of this means." Rebecca nodded, her expression one of heartbreak and understanding. "Take all the time you need," she whispered. "I'll be here waiting." After their emotional confrontation, Alex couldn't shake the turmoil Rebecca's confession had unleashed within him. He spent days replaying their conversation, trying to make sense of her secret and the man named Ethan. Rebecca gave Alex the space he needed, retreating into herself, but her growing anxiety was evident in every move she made. For Alex, every detail of their life together now felt tainted by doubt. He wondered if he had ever truly known the woman he had promised to spend his life with. While he tried to focus on work, the thought of Ethan lingered like a dark shadow. Who was this man, and what role did he still play in Rebecca's life? One evening, Alex returned home to find Rebecca sitting in the living room, her face pale and drawn. She clutched her phone tightly in her hands, and the faint glow of the screen reflected her mounting fear. "He called me," she whispered as Alex entered the room. Alex froze. "What did he say?" Rebecca hesitated, her knuckles whitening as she gripped the phone. "He wants $50,000. If I don't give it to him, he's going to show up here. He said he'll ruin everything." Anger flared within Alex. "He's blackmailing you? That's extortion, Rebecca. You can't let him control you like this." "I know," she cried, her voice trembling. "But he knows things about me, Alex. Things I've never told anyone. If he goes public, it won't just be me who's affected. It'll be you and our child. I don't want our baby growing up under the weight of my past." Her words cut deep, but Alex refused to let fear dictate their next steps. "We're not giving him a dime," he said firmly. "If he thinks he can threaten us, He's in for a rude awakening. Determined to take control of the situation, Alex began gathering information about Ethan. He hired a private investigator, a trusted friend from his college days named Marcus, to dig into Ethan's background. Within days, Marcus delivered a thick file that painted a damning portrait of the man. Ethan Richards, Marcus began, sitting across from Alex in his office. He's got a history of fraud, domestic disputes, and even a stint in prison for embezzlement. The guy's a textbook con artist. He preys on people's vulnerabilities and uses intimidation to get what he wants. Alex's jaw tightened as he flipped through the file. Each page was a testament to Ethan's manipulative nature. Why is he targeting Rebecca now? It's been years since they split up. Probably because he sees her as an easy mark, Marcus replied. He knows she's trying to start fresh, and he's banking on her fear of the past catching up with her. Alex felt a surge of protective anger. Ethan wasn't just a threat to Rebecca. He was a threat to their unborn child and the life they were trying to build. What's the best way to deal with him? Marcus leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression on his face. You've got a couple of options. You can go to the police with this file and press charges for harassment and extortion. Or you can confront him directly and let him know he's picked the wrong people to mess with. After much deliberation, Alex decided on a direct approach. He knew that involving the police could escalate the situation and bring unwanted attention to Rebecca's past. Instead, he resolved to meet Ethan face to face and put an end to his schemes once and for all. Through Marcus's investigation, Alex discovered that Ethan was staying at a rundown motel on the outskirts of town. One evening, armed with the knowledge of Ethan's past and a steely resolve, Alex drove to the location. The neon sign flickered above the motel's office, casting a lurid glow over the parking lot. He found Ethan's room easily. It was the one with the faint strains of loud music and the scent of stale beer wafting from under the door. Alex knocked, his heart pounding, and the door creaked open moments later. Ethan stood in the doorway, his disheveled appearance a stark contrast to the polished image Alex had envisioned. His eyes narrowed when he saw Alex. "Who the hell are you?" "I'm Rebecca's husband," Alex said evenly, his voice cold and steady. "And we need to talk." Ethan smirked, leaning casually against the doorframe. "Ah, the husband. What brings you here? Come to write me a check and send me on my way?" Alex stepped closer, his expression hard. "I know who you are, Ethan. I know about your scams, your time in prison, and your pathetic attempts to intimidate Rebecca. Whatever power you think you have over her, it ends now." Ethan's smirk faltered for a brief moment, but he quickly recovered. "You think you can scare me off with a few threats? You don't know what you're dealing with, buddy." "You're wrong," Alex shot back. "I know exactly what I'm dealing with. A desperate man who's clinging to the last scraps of control he thinks he has. But let me make one thing clear. You don't scare me, and you won't scare Rebecca anymore." The two men stood inches apart, the tension crackling between them like static electricity. Alex refused to back down, his protective instincts roaring to life. Ethan, for all his bravado, seemed to sense that he was outmatched. "I've got nothing to lose," Ethan sneered. "If you don't pay up, I'll make sure everyone knows about Rebecca's past. Let's see how long your perfect little life lasts after that." Alex's expression darkened. "You do that, and you'll be the one with everything to lose. I've already compiled a file on you, your criminal record, your scams, everything. If you so much as breathe in Rebecca's direction again, I'll make sure the police have enough evidence to put you away for good." For the first time, Ethan's confidence wavered. He glanced away, his bravado crumbling under Alex's unrelenting glare. "Fine," he muttered finally. "You win. I'll leave her alone." Alex didn't trust Ethan's sudden capitulation, but he knew that pressing the issue further could backfire. "If I hear from you again," he warned, "there won't be a second chance. Stay away from my wife, my family, and our life." With that, Alex turned and walked away, his heart pounding. He didn't look back, but he could feel Ethan's eyes boring into him as he left. When Alex returned home, Rebecca was waiting for him, her anxiety etched across her face. "Where have you been?" she asked, rushing to him as he stepped through the door. "I dealt with Ethan," Alex said simply, his voice tired but resolute. "He won't bother us again." Rebecca stared at him, her eyes wide with shock. "What did you do?" "I told him the truth," Alex replied, "that we're not afraid of him, and that he doesn't have any power over us anymore." Rebecca's lip quivered. and she threw her arms around him, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry, Alex. I'm sorry for everything." Alex held her tightly, his own emotions threatening to overwhelm him. "It's over now," he whispered. "We can move forward, together." After Alex's confrontation with Ethan, the immediate danger seemed to subside, but the aftermath left a scar on Alex and Rebecca's relationship. While Ethan was no longer a threat, the secrets he had exposed lingered like an open wound. The couple now faced the daunting challenge of rebuilding trust and finding a way forward. A few days after Alex's confrontation with Ethan, he and Rebecca sat down for an honest, heart-to-heart conversation. The living room felt heavy with unspoken words, the silence stretching between them as they gathered their thoughts. Finally, Rebecca broke the tension. "I don't know how to thank you," she began, her voice trembling, "for protecting me, for standing by me, even after everything." Alex looked at her, his expression softening. "Rebecca, I didn't do it just for you. I did it for us, for our family, but I need to understand everything. I need to know there are no more secrets." Rebecca nodded, her eyes brimming with tears. "I promise, Alex. No more secrets. I'll tell you everything." For the next hour, Rebecca laid bare the details of her past. She spoke about how she had fallen for Ethan's charm when she was younger, believing his promises of love and stability. She explained how she had been drawn into his schemes, first unknowingly and then out of fear of retaliation when she discovered the truth. "Ethan had a way of making you feel like you couldn't escape," she said, her voice heavy with regret. "By the time I realized what he really was, I felt trapped. Leaving him was the hardest thing I've ever done. But even after I left, I couldn't escape the fear that he'd come back." Alex listened intently, his heart aching for her. He realized that Rebecca's secrets weren't born out of malice or deceit, but out of fear and survival. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" he asked gently. Rebecca wiped her eyes. "I was ashamed, Alex. I didn't want you to see me as weak or damaged. And when I found out I was pregnant, I was terrified that my past would ruin the life we were trying to build." Hearing Rebecca's story gave Alex a deeper understanding of her pain, but it didn't erase the hurt he felt. He knew rebuilding their relationship would take time and effort from both of them. They decided to seek counseling together, a step neither of them had considered before but now felt necessary. Their therapist, Dr. Harper, was a calm and empathetic presence who guided them through the process of addressing their feelings. In one session, she asked Alex to articulate his feelings of betrayal. "I felt like everything we had was a lie," Alex admitted, his voice shaking. "Like I didn't really know the woman I married." Rebecca listened, her face etched with guilt. "I never meant to make you feel that way," she said softly. "I thought I was protecting you by keeping my past hidden, but I see now that it only hurt us both." Dr. Harper nodded. "Secrets, even when kept with good intentions, can erode trust. The key is open communication moving forward. Rebecca, what steps are you willing to take to rebuild Alex's trust?" Rebecca turned to Alex, her eyes steady. "I'll do whatever it takes. I'll be honest, even when it's uncomfortable, and I'll work every day to show you that you can trust me again." In the weeks that followed, Alex and Rebecca worked on rebuilding their connection. They made an effort to spend quality time together, focusing on the small joys that had once brought them closer. Evening walks, shared meals, and preparing for their baby became rituals that helped them rediscover their bond. One evening, as they sorted through baby clothes in the nursery, Alex found himself smiling at Rebecca's excitement over a tiny onesie. "You're going to be a great mom," he said, surprising himself with the sincerity of his words. Rebecca looked at him, her eyes shining with gratitude. "And you're going to be an amazing dad." Their shared anticipation for the baby's arrival became a source of hope. It reminded them of the life they were building together and the importance of working through their challenges for the sake of their child. Despite their progress, the shadow of Ethan's threats lingered. Rebecca still struggled with anxiety, often waking in the middle of the night with a sense of impending doom. Alex, determined to support her, suggested they take additional steps to feel secure. They installed a security system in their home and made sure Rebecca's phone was equipped with emergency contacts. Alex also kept in touch with Marcus, the private investigator, to stay updated on Ethan's whereabouts. One day Marcus called with news. "Ethan skipped town," he reported. "Looks like he realized he wasn't going to get anything out of you and decided to move on." Relief washed over Alex as he shared the news with Rebecca. While they knew Ethan's departure didn't erase the past, it gave them the breathing room they needed to focus on their future. As their counseling sessions continued, Alex and Rebecca began to see tangible improvements in their relationship. They learned to communicate openly and without judgment, addressing issues before they could fester. Each small victory brought them closer together, rebuilding the trust that had been shaken. One evening, as they sat on the couch watching an old movie, Alex reached for Rebecca's hand. "I know we've been through a lot," he said, his voice steady, "but I want you to know that I still love you, and I'm committed to us, no matter what." Tears welled in Rebecca's eyes as she squeezed his hand. "I love you too, Alex, and I'll spend the rest of my life proving that I'm worthy of your love." Their renewed commitment to each other marked a turning point. They weren't just surviving the fallout of Rebecca's secret. They were finding a way to thrive, despite it. Rebuilding their relationship was only part of the journey for Alex and Rebecca. With their baby's arrival growing nearer, the couple had to adjust to a new reality, balancing their past struggles with the excitement and challenges of impending parenthood. Their lives were far from perfect, but they were learning to embrace their imperfections together. As Rebecca entered her third trimester, the focus of their lives shifted more and more toward the baby. The nursery, once just a collection of empty furniture and pastel paint, became a vibrant space filled with baby clothes, books, and toys. Alex and Rebecca spent their evenings assembling cribs, sorting through gifts from family and friends, and reading parenting books. One afternoon, Rebecca suggested they attend a childbirth preparation class. Alex, initially hesitant, agreed when he saw how excited she was about the idea. The class turned out to be an unexpected bonding experience. Surrounded by other expectant couples, they learned techniques for breathing, swaddling, and handling sleepless nights. During one exercise, the instructor asked each couple to practice verbal affirmations. Alex turned to Rebecca, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "You're going to be an incredible mother, Rebecca, and I'll be right here with you every step of the way." Rebecca's eyes glistened with tears as she replied, "And you'll be the best father our baby could ever ask for." While preparing for the baby brought them closer, Alex and Rebecca continued to work on their trust issues. Dr. Harper's guidance remained instrumental as they navigated their emotions and fears. One exercise she recommended was journaling separately, and then sharing entries with each other. Alex's first entry revealed lingering doubts. "Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever fully trust Rebecca again," he wrote. "But then I see the way she's trying, how much she loves our baby, and I think maybe it's possible." When Rebecca read his words, she didn't feel defensive. Instead, she felt determined. "I know I've hurt you, and I don't expect you to forgive me overnight," she wrote in her journal. "But I'll never stop proving that I'm worthy of your trust." Their shared vulnerability helped bridge the gaps between them. It wasn't always easy. There were still moments of tension and hesitation, but the openness they practiced became the foundation of their healing. One evening, Alex came home with an envelope in his hand and a mischievous smile on his face. Rebecca, lounging on the couch with her feet propped up, looked at him curiously. "What's that?" she asked. "You'll see," Alex replied, handing her the envelope. Rebecca opened it to find a small, handwritten note. "Pack a bag. We're going away for the weekend." "Where are we going?" she asked, her excitement bubbling up. "It's a surprise," Alex said, grinning. "Just trust me." Rebecca did as he asked, and the next morning they set off on their getaway. The destination turned out to be a cozy cabin by the lake, a place Alex had visited with his family as a child. The cabin was simple but charming, with a fireplace, a small dock, and a view of the water that stretched endlessly into the horizon. "This place is perfect," Rebecca said, wrapping her arms around Alex as they stood on the dock. "Thank you for this. I thought we could use some time away," Alex replied, kissing her forehead. "Just us." The weekend was a chance to reconnect without the distractions of daily life. They spent their days hiking, cooking together, and sitting by the fire, talking late into the night. For the first time in months, they felt a sense of peace. Despite their progress, Alex and Rebecca couldn't escape the looming fears of parenthood. Alex worried about whether he'd be able to provide the emotional stability their child would need, while Rebecca grappled with her anxieties about her past. "What if I'm not good enough?" Rebecca admitted one night as they lay in bed. "What if I mess everything up?" "You won't," Alex said firmly. "You've already overcome so much, Rebecca. And you're not alone. We'll figure it out together." No. Rebecca looked at him, her heart swelling with gratitude. How did I get so lucky to have you? Alex smiled. I think we're both pretty lucky. As Rebecca's due date approached, the couple found support from their friends and family. Rebecca's best friend, Megan, threw a baby shower that left Rebecca overwhelmed with gratitude. Gifts, heartfelt notes, and the presence of loved ones reminded her how much support they had around them. Alex, meanwhile, leaned on his own network. His brother, David, who had always been his confidant, became a sounding board for his fears about fatherhood. You're going to be great, Alex, David assured him. Just love that kid with everything you've got, and you'll be fine. One evening, Alex and Rebecca sat on the couch, the baby's ultrasound pictures spread out in front of them. They marveled at the tiny details, the shape of the baby's hands, the curve of its face. Do you ever think about what they'll be like? Rebecca asked softly. All the time, Alex replied. I wonder if they'll have your laugh or my terrible sense of humor. Rebecca laughed, resting her head on his shoulder. Whatever they're like, I know they'll be loved. Alex kissed the top of her head, more than anything. In that quiet moment, surrounded by the promise of new beginnings, Alex and Rebecca felt a sense of hope. They knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but they also knew they had the strength to face it together. As Alex and Rebecca grew closer and their preparations for the baby intensified, a twist of fate brought an unsettling discovery. Life, it seemed, was not done testing their relationship. What Alex stumbled upon one fateful day forced him to confront questions he thought he had already answered. How much do you really know about someone, and can trust ever be fully rebuilt? It happened on a quiet Saturday afternoon. Alex had decided to clean out the storage boxes in their shared home office, a task that had been put off for far too long. As he sifted through old papers, receipts, and forgotten trinkets, a small, unopened envelope caught his eye. The envelope was plain and unassuming, but it bore Rebecca's name in a handwriting Alex didn't recognize. The postmark was from several months ago, around the time they had first found out about the pregnancy. Curiosity gnawed at him as he debated whether to open it. Ultimately, he decided against it and set it aside, intending to ask Rebecca about it later. When Rebecca returned home from her prenatal yoga class, Alex held up the envelope. Hey, I found this while cleaning. It's addressed to you. Do you know what it's about? Rebecca's eyes widened as the color drained from her face. Her reaction was immediate and intense, far more than Alex had anticipated. She reached for the letter, her hand trembling slightly. Where did you find this? She asked, her voice uneven. In the office, Alex replied, his tone gentle but probing. What's going on, Rebecca? Rebecca hesitated, clutching the envelope to her chest. For a moment, Alex thought she might not answer, but then with a shaky breath she said, It's from someone I used to know, someone from my past. Alex felt a knot form in his stomach. What do you mean, someone from your past? Rebecca, what's going on? Rebecca looked down, unable to meet his gaze. Before I met you, I was in a bad place. I made a lot of mistakes. This letter? It's from someone I used to associate with during that time. I didn't think they'd ever reach out again. The words hit Alex like a punch to the gut. He thought they had left all the secrets behind them. Rebecca, he said carefully, you've told me about your struggles, but what kind of association are we talking about here? Rebecca took a deep breath and finally met his eyes. It was complicated. I was involved with someone who wasn't a good influence. It wasn't just a relationship. It was a situation that pulled me into things I'm not proud of. But that part of my life is over, Alex. I swear it. Her words were sincere, but Alex couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. Do you want to open it? See what it says? Rebecca hesitated, then nodded. Together they unfolded the letter. The message inside was brief but chilling. Rebecca, I know you're trying to move on, but some things don't just disappear. You owe me. Don't forget that. There was no signature, but the tone was unmistakable. Whoever had written it intended to disrupt Rebecca's life. Alex felt a surge of protectiveness and anger. Who is this? What do they mean? You owe me. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. His name is Eric. He was part of the group I got involved with back then. He helped me at first, but then he started to control me. I thought I'd escape that life completely. I didn't think he'd find me. Alex's mind raced. Does he know about us, about the baby? I don't think so, Rebecca said quickly. I haven't had any contact with him since I left. But he's threatening you now, Alex pressed. We need to deal with this. The discovery of the letter created a rift between Alex and Rebecca, not because he doubted her sincerity, but because it dredged up all the fears and insecurities he thought he had conquered. He wondered if they would ever truly escape the shadows of Rebecca's past. After much discussion, they decided to seek legal advice. Alex contacted a lawyer he trusted, who assured them that they could take steps to protect themselves and their unborn child. A restraining order was filed, and Alex tightened the security around their home. At the same time, Rebecca began seeing Dr. Harper more frequently. She needed to process not only the resurfacing of her past, but also the impact it was having on her relationship with Alex. Dr. Harper helped her work through her guilt and reminded her of the progress she had made. "Rebecca," Dr. Harper said during one session, "you've come so far. You can't let someone from your past define your present or your future." Despite the challenges, Alex and Rebecca refused to let Eric's threats overshadow their joy about the baby. They doubled down on their preparations, finding comfort in the small victories, painting the nursery, feeling the baby kick for the first time, and attending doctor's appointments together. One evening, as they sat together on the couch, Alex took Rebecca's hand. "We've faced so much already," he said softly. "This is just another hurdle. We'll get through it. Together." Rebecca looked at him, her heart swelling with love. "I don't deserve you, Alex." "Yes, you do," he replied firmly. "You deserve someone who sees how incredible you are, even when you can't see it yourself." The letter and its implications were a stark reminder that the past could never be completely erased, but Alex and Rebecca chose to view it as an opportunity to grow stronger as a couple. They continued to communicate openly, leaning on each other as they faced their fears. Slowly but surely, they began to regain their footing. Rebecca started to feel more confident in her ability to move forward, while Alex found solace in the depth of their connection. They knew there were no guarantees in life, but for the first time in weeks they felt a renewed sense of hope. The shadow cast by Eric's letter lingered, but Alex and Rebecca refused to let it dictate their lives. Instead, they decided to confront it head-on, knowing that the only way to move forward was to face the ghosts of Rebecca's past. The journey they were about to undertake would test their courage, their love, and their commitment to building a future together. A few weeks after filing the restraining order, Rebecca received another message. This time it wasn't a letter but an email, sent to an address she hadn't used in years. The message was brief and chilling, much like the letter. "Rebecca, you can't run forever. We need to talk. I won't ask again." Rebecca's hands shook as she read the email, and Alex immediately noticed her distress. "What's wrong?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. She handed him her phone, unable to speak. As Alex read the message, a storm of emotions flashed across his face. Anger, fear, and determination. "This has to stop," he said firmly. "We're not going to let him intimidate you." Rebecca nodded, but her fear was palpable. "What if he finds us, Alex? What if he tries to hurt you or the baby?" "He won't," Alex assured her. "We'll handle this. Together." Alex decided it was time to dig deeper into Eric's intentions. He contacted a private investigator, someone with a reputation for being thorough and discreet. Together, they pieced together Eric's recent activities, uncovering a pattern that suggested he was desperate, financially unstable, and clinging to remnants of a past life that had long since crumbled. The investigators' findings revealed that Eric's attempts to contact Rebecca were likely motivated by his financial struggles. He seemed to believe that Rebecca owed him something, though it was unclear what he expected to gain. Armed with this information, Alex and Rebecca decided to meet with their lawyer again. The lawyer recommended setting up additional layers of security, including monitoring Rebecca's online activity to prevent further contact. They also explored the possibility of taking legal action against Eric for harassment. As the weeks passed, Rebecca began to feel increasingly trapped by the situation. The fear of the unknown weighed heavily on her, and she struggled to focus on the joy of her pregnancy. Alex, ever the protector, hated seeing her like this. He proposed a bold idea, confronting Eric directly. "Are you sure about this?" Rebecca asked, her voice trembling. "What if it makes things worse?" "We'll do it on our terms," Alex said, "somewhere public where he can't try anything. But we need to send a message that we're not afraid of him." After much discussion, they agreed to arrange a meeting. Through the private investigator, they reached out to Eric, setting up a time and place. The investigator would accompany them, ensuring their safety. The day of the meeting was tense. They chose a quiet coffee shop on the outskirts of town, a place with enough witnesses to discourage any reckless behavior. Alex and Rebecca arrived early, their hearts pounding as they waited. Eric walked in minutes later, his appearance more haggard than Rebecca remembered. He looked older, his once confident demeanor replaced by an air of desperation. His eyes scanned the room before landing on Rebecca, and a crooked smile spread across his face. "Rebecca," he said, taking a seat across from them. "It's been a long time." Rebecca tensed, but Alex placed a reassuring hand on hers. "Cut to the chase," Alex said, his tone cold and firm. "Why are you harassing my wife?" Eric raised an eyebrow, clearly unprepared for Alex's directness. "Harassing? I just wanted to talk. Rebecca and I have unfinished business." "Whatever you think she owes you, you're mistaken," Alex said. "Her life doesn't involve you anymore, and it never will." Eric leaned back, his smile fading. "You don't understand. Rebecca and we went through a lot together. She wouldn't have survived without me. I'm just asking for what's fair." Rebecca finally found her voice. "Fair? You manipulated me, Eric. You used me for your own gain and left me to pick up the pieces. I owe you nothing." Eric's expression hardened, but before he could respond, the private investigator stepped forward, subtly flashing his badge. "This conversation is over," the investigator said firmly. "If you contact her again, we'll escalate this legally. Do you understand?" Eric glared at Alex and Rebecca, but ultimately stood and walked away without another word. As Eric disappeared into the distance, Rebecca felt a weight lift from her chest. She turned to Alex, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered, "for standing by me through all of this." Alex pulled her into a tight embrace. "We're in this together, Rebecca. Always." For the first time in weeks, Rebecca felt a glimmer of hope. They had faced the threat head-on and emerged stronger for it. While the fear of Eric's return lingered, they refused to let it overshadow their lives. With Eric no longer an immediate threat, Alex and Rebecca focused on rebuilding their sense of security and preparing for the arrival of their baby. They attended parenting classes, decorated the nursery, and shared quiet moments dreaming about their future as a family. Rebecca also resumed her therapy sessions with Dr. Harper, determined to confront the lingering shadows of her past. She wanted to be the best version of herself for her child and her husband. "You've taken back control of your story," Dr. Harper told her during one session. "That's no small feat, Rebecca. Be proud of how far you've come." As Alex and Rebecca sat together one evening watching the baby's crib take shape, Alex took her hand. "We've been through so much, but we're still standing," he said. "That says something about us, don't you think?" Rebecca nodded, her eyes brimming with gratitude. "It says we're stronger than anything life throws at us." Alex smiled, leaning in to kiss her forehead. "And we always will be." As the final months of Rebecca's pregnancy unfolded, the weight of their recent ordeal began to fade into the background. It wasn't that the memories disappeared, they never would, but Rebecca and Alex made a conscious choice to focus on the life they were building together. Their love had been tested in unimaginable ways, and while the scars remained, they were a testament to their resilience. The baby's arrival loomed closer, filling their home with a sense of anticipation and excitement. Each day brought new preparations, folding tiny clothes, assembling baby gear, and finalizing the hospital bag. These small tasks became symbolic of the new chapter they were about to embark on, a chapter filled with hope and possibilities. Rebecca often found herself reflecting on the twists and turns that had brought her to this moment. She had started the year burdened by secrets, terrified of losing the life she had built with Alex. Now those secrets were out in the open, and while they had caused immense pain, they had also laid the foundation for a deeper, more honest relationship. One evening, as they sat in the nursery admiring their handiwork, Alex turned to her. "You know," he began, "if someone had told me a year ago that we'd go through all of this, I don't know if I would have believed them." Rebecca smiled softly, placing a hand on her growing belly. "Me neither, but I think it's made us stronger, don't you?" Alex nodded, his gaze filled with love. "Stronger, yes, and closer. I wouldn't trade this for anything, Rebecca." As the due date approached, Rebecca began experiencing subtle signs that her body was preparing for labor. One morning, while Alex was at work, she felt a sharp pain in her lower back. At first, she brushed it off as Braxton Hicks contractions, but as the day progressed, The discomfort grew more intense. By the time Alex arrived home, Rebecca was pacing the living room, her face pale but determined. "I think it's time," she said, her voice a mix of excitement and apprehension. Alex sprang into action, grabbing the hospital bag and helping Rebecca into the car. The drive to the hospital felt surreal, a blend of nerves and exhilaration, as they realized their lives were about to change forever. After hours of labor, Rebecca finally held their baby, a beautiful, healthy girl, in her arms. Tears streamed down her face as she looked at Alex, who was cradling her hand and gazing at their daughter with awe. "She's perfect," Rebecca whispered, her voice filled with emotion. Alex nodded, his eyes never leaving their baby. "She's more than perfect. She's everything." In that moment, all the pain, fear, and uncertainty of the past months seemed to dissolve. Their daughter's arrival marked a fresh start, a chance to create a future defined by love, trust, and resilience. In the weeks that followed, Rebecca found herself thinking often about Eric. While his actions had caused her immense pain, she realized she didn't want to carry that bitterness with her. She spoke to Alex about her feelings, sharing her desire to let go of the anger that still lingered. "I'm not saying I'll ever forget what he did," Rebecca explained, "but I don't want him to have that power over me anymore. I want to forgive, not for him, but for me." Alex listened carefully, his respect for Rebecca deepening. "If that's what you need to heal, then I support you. But just know that you're not alone in this. You never have to face anything alone again." Together, they crafted a letter, not to send to Eric, but as a symbolic act of release. In it, Rebecca expressed her pain, her journey, and her decision to move forward without the weight of resentment. When the letter was finished, they burned it together, watching the smoke rise as if carrying her burdens away. As news of their baby's birth spread, the couple was overwhelmed by the outpouring of love and support from friends, family, and neighbors. It reminded them of the strength of the community that had rallied around them during their darkest moments. Rebecca's therapist, Dr. Harper, visited the family to check in and meet the baby. "You've come a long way, Rebecca," she said warmly. "It's been a privilege to watch your journey." Rebecca smiled, holding her daughter close. "I couldn't have done it without Alex. And you. You've both shown incredible resilience," Dr. Harper said. "And now you have a new reason to keep moving forward." One evening, Alex and Rebecca sat on the porch, the baby monitor humming softly beside them. The stars sparkled above and a gentle breeze rustled the trees. It was a rare moment of peace, and they savored it. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" Rebecca asked, her voice tinged with wonder. "Every day," Alex replied. "And I wouldn't change a thing. Even the hard parts. They brought us here." Rebecca nodded, her eyes misty. "I'm grateful for you, Alex, for standing by me when you had every reason to walk away." Alex took her hand, his grip firm and reassuring. "And I'm grateful for you, for being brave enough to trust me with the truth. We've built something unbreakable, Rebecca, and I can't wait to see where this journey takes us next." As the weeks turned into months, Alex and Rebecca embraced their roles as parents with joy and determination. The challenges they faced only served to deepen their bond, reminding them of the strength they had discovered in each other. Their daughter became a symbol of their journey, a reminder that even in the face of betrayal and heartbreak, love could endure. Together, they had rewritten their story, proving that even the most painful secrets could lead to profound healing and transformation. Love, trust, and resilience are not easy paths to walk, but Alex and Rebecca's story is a testament to the power of facing challenges together. Their journey is a reminder that even when life throws its hardest punches, it's possible to find hope, rebuild trust, and create something beautiful. Like this story? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming and inspiring tales. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Your feedback helps us bring you more amazing content. Amazing content. Amazing content.